Welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast, where we're all about sharing the forbidden secrets and slightly embellished truths about corporate cybersecurity programs. We're ranting, we're raving, and we're telling you the stuff that nobody talks about on their fancy website and trade show giveaways, all to protect you from cyber criminals. And now, here's your hosts, Mike Rotondo, Zach Fuller, and Lauro Chavez.
Hello and welcome to the Cyber Rants Podcast. This is your co-host, Zach Fuller, joined by Mike Rotondo and Lauro Chavez. We have a good episode here planned for you today. Not really planned, little more ad hoc, but we want to talk about really how to get the most out of your security services firm, provider, partner, or whatever you want to call them, how to engage, how to really make sure that you're invested in that in a way that's meaningful for the organization and really get you the most out of it and makes the needle move the furthest in your risk management program. So we'll be talking about all that good stuff, but before we do, we'll kick it off in our usual fashion. Mike?
I'm going to start it out with zero-click hacks gaining in popularity, which is a problem, obviously. Malware typically infects electronic devices with the assistance of a finger press or some kind of action like a mouse click. However, zero-click malware requires no human interaction at all to execute its mission. This malware category was originally reserved for government agencies and the like of that. But some creators are electing to sell it to broader customer base. It typically sells zero-click malware for $200 to $600K for the source code. Cybersecurity experts are fearful that zero-click technology would spread through the underground should its source code be compromised. So, we got that to deal with too now. MFA fatigue attacks users tricked into allowing device access due to overload of push notifications. This is kind of interesting. MFA fatigue is the name given to a technique used by adversaries to flood a user's authentication app with push notifications in the hope they will accept and therefore enable an attacker to gain entry into an account or device. It's primarily a social engineering attack counting on predictable human behavior. Cyber criminals are targeting Office 365 users with MFA fatigue attacks, bombarding victims with 2FA push notifications to trick them into authenticating their login attempts, coupled with brute force dictionary attacks or phishing to obtain passwords and credentials. Malicious emails can crash Cisco email security appliances. Cisco this week informed customers that its email security appliance, ESA, product is affected by a high severity denial of service vulnerability that can be exploited using specially crafted emails. The flaw is tracked to CVE 2022-20653 and affects the DNS-based authentication of named entities. So if you've got that, look into the resolution for that. Hey, Microsoft's in the news. Microsoft Teams targeted with takeover Trojans. Threat actors are targeting Microsoft Teams users by planting malicious documents and chat threads that execute Trojans that ultimately can take over an end-user machines, researchers have found. In the attack vector, researchers observed attackers first access Teams through a phishing email that spoofs a user or through lateral attack on the network. Then the threat actor attaches a .exe file to a chat called user-centric, says actually a Trojan. To the end user, it looks legitimate because it appears to be coming from a trusted user. Just a side note on this, we have dealt with some people that try to open up Teams to all of their customer base and everything. This is one of the reasons why you don't want to do that. You want to have control over who has access to it. Hackers backdoor unpatched Microsoft SQL database servers with Cobalt Strike. Vulnerable internet-facing Microsoft SQL servers are being targeted by threat actors as part of a new campaign to deploy the Cobalt Strike adversary simulation tool on compromised hosts. Attacks that target MS SQL servers include attacks on the environment where its vulnerability has not been patched, brute forcing and dictionary attacks against poorly managed servers that allows an attacker to deploy an agent named Beacon on the victim's machine, granting the operator remote access to the system. This last one, Iranian hackers targeting VMware Horizon Log4j flaws to deploy ransomware. The only reason I concluded is because I wanted to say this. This is conducted by a group called Phosphorus, as well as Charming Kitten and Nemesis Kitten. So watch out for the kittens because they're coming again. Yeah, so there is a bunch of news. I didn't want to go into it today, but there's a whole lot of news out there that we've included in the podcast notes about what Russia's going to do, the potential cyber attacks. Anonymous is now getting into fighting Russia at the cyber level. So there's a bunch of news out there about that. I've got it. We've got the headlines that'll be posted, but by the time the podcast posts, hopefully we'll still have an internet, right? Lauro, what do you got for us?
Thanks, Mike. No, I noticed that RT News yesterday was down to probably victims of the anonymous denial of services happening. So,
Yeah.
anyways, lots of fun stuff going on. I only have really one exploit to talk about this week, and it has to do with the Microsoft gaming services. So you're welcome. Yes, yeah, I know it doesn't happen often, but I am all about when I see the gaming system comes up, because I know there's a lot of individuals that are on these platforms that have no idea this dubious stuff is going on in the background. But it is Microsoft, so you could only imagine that. Yes, of course, there's a flaw in the Microsoft gaming services. So if you're on 2.52, there is an unquoted service path that'll get you all the way into the gaming services net.exe and the gaming services exe, so that you can modify and manipulate those processes. So make sure that you are upgrading. Microsoft has fixed this flaw as of February 11th. So make sure that you're getting off of 2.52 for the gaming services if you're using that. All right, that's all for exploits this week. Zach,
Outstanding. Well,
what are we talking about?
How about if I tell you in just a moment, but we will take a quick commercial break first, and we'll see you right back here in just a moment.
Want even more Cyber Rants? Be sure to subscribe to the Cyber Rants podcast. Get your copy of our best-selling book, Cyber Rants, on Amazon today. This podcast is brought to you by Silent Sector, the firm dedicated to building world-class cybersecurity programs for mid-market and emerging companies across the U.S. Silent Sector also provides industry-leading penetration tests and cyber risk assessments. Visit silentsector.com and contact us today.
And we're back today to talk about really how to get the most of your engagement once you engage a cybersecurity services firm. In other words, how do you stay on track, keep the pace, make sure communications are good, all these different things to go into it, right? When you're making that investment as an organization to work with a security partner or services partner, you want to make sure that you're taking advantage of that, right? Because it's definitely not cheap, not a cheap endeavor, and you want to make sure that you're getting the most out of it. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And wanted to just dive in and talk about some different examples, really, because we see a whole bunch of different companies and have just some outstanding clients on the ball, keep it on top of things. But then other organizations out there don't make it such a priority, right? And they let things slip through the cracks, or they, constant kind of delays and postponements and things like that. And it's unfortunate. I think everybody goes into the idea of building a formalized cybersecurity program and investing time and effort in this stuff, thinking, yeah, we really want to get this done. We want to move forward. We want to get it done quickly, accomplish our goals. But then life happens, business happens. So we want to talk about how to kind of avoid some of those pitfalls, some of those issues, and keep on track, stick with your goals, your plans, and go from there. And to start that off, I thought maybe we could start talking about the difference in those things that you can't rely 100% on anybody outside your organization to do for you, right? There is going to be work on your side. Mike, Laura, I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of what are some of those key activities and things that organizations need to be ready to do and allocate their own time for once they hire a cybersecurity services partner to help build a program.
Well, I think the first and foremost thing, I think, is the documentation. I think that there's a lot of illusion that and misinformation that you could just download some of these templates for the governance documentation set, right? Your security policies and technology standards and things like that, and they're turnkey. And that's unfortunately just not the case. Not even from professional services firms, right? Like us, we'll give you the templates that are, 85, 90% of the way there, but there's still information from your organization that needs to be not only retrofitted into the documents themselves, but then the documents also need to be approved. And so there's a review process that needs to happen with upper management, and that can tend to take some time. unfortunately, right? And it's going to be out of the provider's hands. I think that's at least one place I know of. Mike, what do you?
Yeah, I mean, the documentation is one thing, and we get a lot of companies to be like, hey, give us all the documentation, we'll get it done. And then 6-8 weeks later, it's like, can you help us get the documentation done? There's a lot of questions about this documentation, and it does have to be customized. We see a lot of failure around companies that I don't want to say they're complacent, but they just want to check the box. So they'll go out and get a cybersecurity firm to build out a document library that they'll never enforce, get a pen test that they don't really pay attention to, or they'll do a lot of things that they just almost paying lip service to satisfy a client or a requirement of one of their clients or something of that nature. And really, I think you just have to be really committed to it. If you're going to go through all the trouble of making a document set, broadcast it to your people, enforce it, make sure it happens, and then actually get it done, because it has to be tailored to your company. I'm recalling something from the past, and I can't remember specifically where I read it, but it was something like the majority of companies that buy canned documentation fail in their processes because they're never tailored to the company, and the companies tend to be more ripe for breach and exploitation. So,
and failing audits.
oh
Yeah,
well,
that too.
yeah.
That'll most certainly happen. So, to the topic, how can you be successful with the partner that you're committed to helping you build this cybersecurity program, and even if it is to satisfy a requirement and hopefully get a new deal with a super huge client that's going to change your business forever. There's still only really a single path of success that you can take on this journey, and whether you do it alone or in this case you're committed to a partnership with a cybersecurity professional firm. You're gonna start out with an assessment, right? On you got to pick a framework, right? And so that's part of it. Sometimes that can take time. If the organization is critical about the differences, there may be a couple months that go back and forth just on what is the proper path to take. Is it CIS? Is it ISO 27? Is it PCI? Is it NIST 800? Is it NIST CMMC? So there's a lot of conversation that can happen there if you don't trust the services firm to just tell you which one is going to be probably the best for your evolutionary place in your business lifespan. What's going to be the best course of action to take? Once you get there, you're going to have an assessment, a gap assessment. There's going to be a plan of action. And I think this is where, Mike, jump in any time here, but I think this is where clients really find out the level of work that needs to be done to not only achieve the compliance framework, but maintain it. Because I think there's the other illusion I think is realized a lot when you go down this path is that, especially if you've never done it before, these are forever machines. You don't start down the path, a committed path to CIS controls or NIST CSF and not expect to have to do it every year from an assessment perspective, and also have to maintain that compliance state 24/7, 365.
Well, that's why we talk about compliance through operations, right? You just build it as part of your operational procedures. But one of the things that I see that's important too is to identify a point person that is responsible for it. That is your relationship between the services firm and the company, because a lot of times we see, oh, we'll just notify the team, and then inevitably everybody gets busy. And I'm not knocking anybody, but it's oh, he'll take care of it, or she'll take care of it, or they'll take care of it, and then it doesn't get done. So that's one of the things that needs to be. I mean, you should have a team, but there needs to be a point person that's ultimately responsible for handling the engagement with the security firm. So yeah, I mean,
yeah, because the security firm is going to come with a project manager typically, right? That's going to
right.
keep all of the professional services endeavors in order, but you almost need a similar individual inside your organization to kind of track and monitor that stuff, right? I mean, because
exactly someone has to be responsible, right? And it can't be some manager who doesn't come to the meetings.
Yeah, and here's the other thing is that as a professional services firm, we can't make your employees do anything, right? We
Right.
can't make your leadership do anything either. You know, you're paying the professional services firm to bring in this, this expertise and to have that trusted advisory position to kind of give you this path, but we can't help you. We can't make you walk it, right? I think that
Right.
that's, what do they say? Knowing the path and walking the path are two different things, Neo. I don't know.
Well,
Yeah, right.
even in the places where we're function as an actual CISO, we don't have the ability to hire, fire, discipline, that sort of thing for things that we see as, as negative activities. Also, we don't have the ability to reward service. We can make recommendations to management, and that's about all we can do. So even when you engage a services firm and give them the title of CISO, there's still limitations. And to your point, Laura, there's only so much that we can do. There's certain
Right.
things that tribal knowledge internally that that we don't know and will never know, that we try to get you to write down and codify and that sort of thing, so that you can make these processes work for you. I mean, and then it's not all about documentation. It's just about being committed to it, really. And that's the frustration I found. I mean, we deal with clients, or I've dealt with clients in the past, where their expectations are such, or the individual that we're dealing with is so is not skilled enough to understand how to utilize a securities firm, and you keep trying, pushing, and saying, how can I help you? What can I do for you? This is what we need to do. And they're like, okay. And then nothing ever gets done. And it's just, you're throwing money away at that point.
Yeah.
But
I think that's critical, right? That,
yeah.
Number one, you got to be committed to the implementation of a security program, right? Because this isn't a one and done. This isn't, you do it one time and you're good for 10 years. This is a repetitive, operationalized activity that's going to be a part of your business from this point forward. So you got to be committed to it. One, right? And I think, Mike, that's certainly probably one of the most important reasons why companies succeed and companies fail when they go through this path, right? And then the second thing, outside of number one, being committed to this, is two, is you got to understand that there's going to be work involved in this, right? And it's going to be outside of your duties, and you have to be not only committed to the plan, but committed to ensuring your people and yourself and your leadership dedicate time out of their normal daily stuff and start to add these new operationalized processes in place that are going to be necessary, whether it's a security council meeting that's happening, bi-monthly, or, there's something new that needs to be added to the risk register, or there's, just one of the goal markers on the security roadmap is getting missed now, and it's starting to wane behind because, people are not dedicating their time to doing things. I think the third one is you got to be ready to spend some money, possibly. There's going to be, doesn't matter what compliance framework you go with. As an example, none of them are going to allow you to donate and drive your employees to have administrative permissions on all of the technologies they control or they're using every day, right? It doesn't matter what you pick. Doesn't matter if you pick NIST, doesn't matter if you pick CIS, doesn't matter if you go down PCI's road. Your users, your employees cannot have administrative level controls over their machinery unless their job just absolutely warrants it and you want to write that in. And what that does is, unfortunately, that causes the need for architectural to be in place to prevent that. And so most of the time, you're not using a technology like Active Directory because you're smaller, so you haven't deployed Active Directory, and you're not gonna be able to set this up without the spend of money. And so I think outside of the professional services costs that you're gonna incur on the budget for having the security services come in and help you, they're gonna point out places that you're weak, and there's not gonna be a really way to resolve that unless you spend money. And I think I can say that we try the best to not. We try very hard not to do things old school and open source and try to be very cost minded. But unfortunately, there's just some places that you can't not avoid spending money to get a technology to help you, whether it's anti-malware, drive encryption, or the redaction of administrative control.
Well, and we are technology agnostic, right? And we will help you maximize what you have in house. And that's important. So going out and buying some new tool is not necessarily the answer either. And we definitely speak to that, and we will. But yes, you got to be willing to spend. There's certain things like if you have a requirement to have FIM, you have to go buy a FIM solution. You can't. There's no way to fake it. Um, there's things like that you need to be willing to commit to in order to be successful with this. Is there is going to be a certain amount of spend. The other thing is there has to be realistic expectations. Um, we have to set appropriate. You have to set appropriate internal expectations that to be aligned to a cybersecurity framework is going to take 12 to 24 months, more like 18 to 24 months, simply because of the lift that's necessary and the fact that with many small companies, you don't have a dedicated team to do it. You've got someone who's doing it 10, 12 hours a week, interspersed between their other duties. So it's an 18 to 24 month process, and we will gladly shepherd you through that, but you need to commit it. Just sticking your toe in the water isn't a way to get this thing done.
How would you answer how would you answer the $1 million question that we get a lot? It's tough one, but the question companies are always wondering is, well, we engage a services firm, we're going to build this formal security program aligned to these compliance requirements. How much time do we, meaning internally, how much time do we need to dedicate to this apart from our day jobs? Is there any way to answer that you could imagine?
Every company is going to be different because it's all based on what your starting point is. We can evaluate that based off initial assessment. So, if you're concerned about time frame, the idea would be to do an assessment and you can get a scope of work and a project plan out of that, and you'll get an idea from there. Decide if you want to go forward. So you can choose to do a small engagement of an assessment against a framework, and then engage on a larger engagement, or you can just jump right in. But I think it's 100% subjective to how much time you have, how much, resources you have. I mean, we have clients, because they're smaller companies and the pay scale isn't there, they bring someone in as a junior security guy or a girl, and they work on it for a year or two, and then they disappear. And there's that talent gap all of a sudden disappears talent gap appears because they had one person dedicated to it. So it all depends on what your internal resources look like in order to hit this.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, if I'm gonna, you're right. You've got to do the assessment and find out where your gaps are and how much work you have to, because you may be 50% of the way there, you may be 10% of the way there, you may be 90% of the way there of being compliant.
Right.
If I had to put if you come back and you're 30% compliant in an 18-month time frame, if the key individuals that are critical to the success of the implementation of the security plan dedicate somewhere between 2 and 8 hours a week, then reasonably you could be there in somewhere between 12 and 24 months, as long as things maintain a steady pace. I think an efficient, mature cybersecurity program, maybe everybody's dedicating 10% of their time a week to doing cybersecurity initiatives throughout the year to make sure that they remain compliant and that operational activities that are required for these frameworks are being done. With automation and the leverage of the tools that you may have in place, and using alerting, and you can get down to where all the critical individuals involved may be spending 10% of their time a week involved in cybersecurity related, I'll call it maintenance, right? Just the kind of the maintenance is happening, not when you have an incident, right? That's completely out of that. But if I had to make up numbers, I'd say that would be somewhat realistic if you're dedicating someplace, between those numbers in the initial, 2-year mark to get the major lift completed. And but to your point, Mike, it depends on how many people the organization have, because the fewer people you have, the more time you have to dedicate to it, right?
And I would add to that too, if you're thinking, time frame. I mean, there's a lot of the lift that happens up front. I would say first, 6 months or so, you can achieve a lot of alignment with the frameworks and such from what we see. but then it comes into fine tuning, systemizing, right? Evidence collection for audits, which, by the way, despite what a lot of the tools and websites will show you, is still very much a manual process. I mean, maybe I guess maybe 30% of evidence collection could be automated, and the rest still requires human beings. So so keep those things in mind as you go about it. It's not that you're not going to be more secure until 2 years from now. It's just that there's operationalization that needs to happen, and that's why we have a chapter of that in our book.
Yeah,
I mean,
nice.
The heavy lifting, a lot of the heavy lifting is going to happen in the first 6 to 8 months, 9 months maybe. And that's going to be fine tuning. But really, after the first, I mean, if you were to engage us within 30 days, we'll have a pretty good roadmap in place. And then you're going to have to decide that, it's going to have to be prioritized. Then you need to decide on budget. And then you have to decide on what you're going to buy when. Is this a 2023 Q3 issue, or is this a 2022 Q2 issue, or what? Make that decision. But there's a lot of things that are whole company commitments. There's interactions that you need with accounting to make IT secure. There's interactions you need with HR to make accounting to make IT secure. It's a whole company. It's not just an IT focus too. And that's the other part, that especially when we get into compliance like SOC 2, it's not just an IT function.
That's true.
Can we touch also on one of the big factors I would say is, and this is probably generally geared more towards smaller companies, but you have to have good professional IT support that is dedicated to this as well, right? For larger organizations that have a very dedicated professional IT team in-house, that's going to be much easier to accomplish these things than the smaller organizations where it's somebody's nephew comes in and does work once a month on the computers in the office, right? It's not that. Or if they have a managed service provider that's kind of absentee and doesn't really want to deal with this stuff, that's going to be extremely difficult. So you need to have some sort of IT management capability to do the hands-on IT work, kind of the day-to-day, keep the lights on type operations as well. Otherwise, it's going to be an extreme struggle, because they are not doing the same functions as your security services provider, but they're very much complementary and need to be involved in this.
Yeah, you can't wholly depend on your MSP. A lot of MSPs out there do sell security services, but they are not run by security professionals. They've designed some program, they've gone out and they've found some tools, they've downloaded some best practices off the web, and they just don't have the in-depth knowledge. Security professionals have to be security professionals all the time, and dedicated to it. Those are the people. I mean, the research that Laura and I and Zach do, and the rest of our team does, just to stay up on what's going on, the potential threats that are out there, to identifying vectors, identifying tools and countermeasures and those sort of things. That takes time, and MSPs don't have that time. They're focused on their core business, which is managing their services. So with all due respect to our MSP partners, there's some great ones out there. There's some out there that I've been familiar with that they call themselves a security services firm because the brother of the guy that owns the company is going through a CISSP class. That is not a security professional. That is someone taking an online class.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. So, if you want to be successful with a professional services firm to come in and get you sorted out for cybersecurity, get you moving with new customers and clients, bigger clients, passing questionnaires, passing compliance assessments, those sorts of things, do your homework, pick a good professional services firm. The professional services firm, the cybersecurity firm that you hire should provide you leadership and guidance and give you a lot of the tools that are going to help you successful, but you got to be prepared to do work. Okay, be prepared to understand that this, whatever firm you choose is going to come in, they're going to guide you, they're going to help you, but they can't do everything for you. So be ready to dedicate time to a lot of the initiatives that are probably going to be on your security roadmap. Okay, they're going to take time. there's, like Mike said, there's going to be a pretty heavy lift in the first 6 months to get a lot of the documentation, a lot of the programmatic operationalized things done. Be prepared to do work. Be prepared to dedicate your team a small amount of time, right? At least a week to dedicate to this work to stay on track. Be prepared to answer to a project manager. Okay, if you've got dates in the sand, or the professional services firm is going to tell you we can get you there in 24 months, this roadmap's going to print that out. So there's going to be dates and times and assignees that are going to be tracked and monitored through this project. Make sure you honor that, right? Try to stick to it. The recipe is neatly as possible. You'll be more successful. And then of course, be ready to spend some money. There's going to be some things that that are going to be requirements out of this that you might not see coming. Be prepared to ask for budget from leadership. Be able to use the professional services firm to help you justify that, right? Silent sector is technology agnostic. Like Mike said, we try to take a look at the tools you have and see. We had a discussion about this a couple of weeks ago. Most tools are only about 35% deployed anyway, at best case. Yep. So we can come in and help you look and say, oh, you don't need to buy this new tool. The tool you already have just has a module. It won't cost you anything. Maybe you have to sign up for an extra 2 years with it. You know what I mean? So we can help you leverage what you have already, and a good professional services firm should do that also. Unlike an MSP who's going to be like, oh, well, you need new firewalls in order to pass this assessment. So be leery of that, right? There shouldn't be any hokey, you got to buy this to be compliant stuff happening if there's not a real line justification from a framework, a framework control line back to a technology that you don't already have, like giving everybody administrative privileges like that. That would be one thing that's easy to determine. So yeah, keep those in mind.
Yeah. One thing I've seen too that has helped us a lot, but I would make this recommendation: anybody that's out there looking for a cybersecurity services partner, somebody to help them get aligned to a framework, get compliant, get secure. Make sure when you're talking with them, it shouldn't be just about the number of external and internal IPs. It shouldn't just be about the web applications. Tell them and be willing to share some of the, I hate to call it dirty laundry, but that's what it is about how your company works internally, right? You should be under NDA with them by point anyway, but share about how the politics work, who reports to who, any kind of power struggles, anything like that, because one, they should know that going in to understand how to advise you on how to get things done. But two, they can also be an advocate for you, trying to push some of these initiatives through. Oftentimes, leadership will listen to the third-party advisory firm more than their in-house people. And I hate to say that. I know we've talked about that before on other episodes, but it's just the hard truth of it. But use that to your advantage internally to get these initiatives done that need to be done. But they can't really fully help you unless you're willing to share some of the underlyings of the company, some of the things that you can't just get from the website and some vulnerability scans, right? So let them know, let them help you navigate this stuff, because they do it every single day with a whole variety of organizations and see a lot of different stuff. So that's all. I'll leave it on that. Mike, Laura, do you have any final words of wisdom to share before we jump off?
We definitely can be a resource for helping you get budget, helping you put the words together to communicate effectively with your management team, your business team that doesn't always understand why it's important. So definitely leverage the firm to do that. And it's not going to be budget for us. It's going to be budget for, we need this appliance, we need this tool, we need this resource, we need this, that, the other thing. It's not going to be, oh, we need another 100 hours for silent sector. That's not what we're talking about when we talk about budget. The other thing I would say is watch out for Charming Kitten and Nemesis Kitten.
Ooh, those kittens.
Yeah. Those kittens. Yeah. And so from my perspective, number one, be committed to having a strong cybersecurity program that protects your business and your data, and the data that you have custodial responsibility over that doesn't belong to you, right? So be committed. Do your research, pick a good firm that's going to help you. Be aware that you're going to need to do work, and also be aware that there's going to be some gaps on the roadmap that you may need extra spend to resolve. So it can be a fun road if you pick the right firm. I know that our clients have a pretty good time working with us. We try to make it as light and fun as possible. So yeah, hopefully you don't pick somebody that comes in like a drill sergeant. I know Zach misses those days, but
well, sometimes it's good to get yelled at. Some of my best life lessons were harsh ones, but that
yeah,
said,
my mom was all in yelling at me, "Get off the computer!"
I know. Yeah, you'll never get anywhere doing that computer stuff. It's a fact.
You're gonna rot your brain. Get off the computer.
Well, kids, get off the computer. Go play outside. Everybody else, stay classy. Thank you for joining us on the Cyber Rants podcast. We appreciate you. We hope we're sharing information that is relevant and helpful to you. And hey, I want to ask a quick favor. If you already bought and own the Cyber Rants book, please leave us an Amazon review. It helps more people find us. I know a lot of people in the tech world don't like to kind of interact and leave reviews and stuff. I'm one of those people that's guilty of that. I rarely review anything, but leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the book. And same thing with the podcast. Subscribe. And remember, the podcast news articles are linked on the website, cyberrantspodcast.com. So thank you again. Share this information around if you found it helpful, and we will see you next time.
Even if you don't subscribe, we still love you.
True.
Just a little less.
Slightly less, but we still love you.
Pick up your copy of the Cyber Rants book on Amazon today. And if you're looking to take your cybersecurity program to the next level, visit us online at www.silentsector.com. Join us next time for another edition of the Cyber Rants podcast.